Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitters. And today we're going to be doing my December palette ranking. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me. We're getting into it right now. Alright, now the thing that you should know about my December palette ranking is that a lot of these palettes have actually been sitting for like the last 6 to 8 weeks or so, and I've been trying them here or there, and what I've discovered is that a lot of them I'm just not coming back to. So I feel like I need to review them, cross them off my list, kind of get them out of the work on trying these basket so that I can make room for other things, because I have a lot of other things that I need to be trying. So we're going to get through a whole bunch of those type of palettes today, and then a couple that like were real standouts. Coming in at number 12 is the Colourpop Cherry Crush palette. Now this palette is just, it's very monochromatic. Let me hold it up this way so you can see. Super monochromatic, right? And it's pretty colors. I love this like deep plummy shade over here, and I like that you have more of like a pinky row, a red row, and then more of like a burgundy row. But every time I open it up, I'm like, basically gonna make the same exact look that I've made with this palette. So after using it a couple times, I'm kind of like, yeah, I got what I needed from it. And so it came in at number 12. Coming in at number 11 is the Huda Wild Chameleon palette, and I love the lenticular images that they do on these palettes. This is what the palette looks like. Whoop, there we go. So not a huge fan of gold, which is why this was the last of the palettes in this collection that I picked up. But I really liked the idea of the purple, this like bluey purple here, and then like kind of these burgundy orangey shades here. I used it, it was fine. It just wasn't like blowing me out of the water the way some of the other ones did. Like the Jaguar palette out of this collection, the one that's like silvery, blew me out of the water. It was like one of my favorite palettes. So this one, I just had like really high expectations that I feel like the color story just couldn't meet. And I got it because, you know, collector wise, I wanted to have the trio. It was on sale, so it was like the perfect time to pick it up. But I just know it's my least favorite, and that's why it took me so long to pick this one up. All right, coming in at number 10 is the Colourpop Truly Iconic palette. This is one of those Colourpop for Target palettes, and it looks like this. Now, I was really drawn, number one, to this like nice deep grungy black, but then also this kind of like, let me see if I can just grab like a little swatch here. This kind of like bluey white shade. It just looked so pretty to me, and I decided I wanted to try it. I had a coupon at Target, so it really didn't cost me a whole lot to try it. And for what I paid for it, it's a nice palette. Is it going to be my like end all be all favorite palette of all time? Not in the least, but I did think it was a good palette. I think it would be a great companion palette for other cool toned palettes or singles that you have in your collection, because the tones that they have, like especially this column here, the tones that they have are very nice. So it's a nice palette, it works really well, but it's not like my favorite of all time color story. So coming in at number 9 is the Huda Purple Haze palette. I picked this up during their Black Friday sale, and I wanted to try this one, and I wanted to try the Khaki Haze palette. I'll show you this one close up as well. So I was most excited about this, like, bro. People are just having their feelings out on the road today. So I was mostly excited about this purpley row right here, and I do think it's pretty. I think what this palette suffers from is depth. So all of the shades, even this one, which looks like it would be super dark, is just not super dark. When you like swatch it out, like it's just kind of, it's like a deceptively pastel shade. So I think what this palette suffers from is just a lack of depth. Had this been a little bit deeper, I think this would have been a really great palette, and I think it would have been one of the better ones that they produced. But the fact that everything is so light just kind of like bums me out. I do think the metallics in that one are pretty nice though. They're really nice, like toppery, glittery type shades. So if you like those kind of special type shades from other collections, you may really like this palette. I paid $5 for it though. So for me, this coming in at $5 was a reasonable price. Would I pay $30 for this palette? No. Coming in at number 8 is the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette, and this one kind of bums me out because it's super pretty, right? but the only deep shades that are in here are like these two, I guess, and that one, and this one is like kind of a mid-tone green. Like it looks dark in the pan, but it's definitely very mid-tone, and then the rest of the shades are just kind of like very soft shades. I think this palette is beautiful, and I think it would look really nice with other palettes. I think it would be a great companion palette. And I love this like super sparkly shade down here. Like it's like one of her super wet highlighter almost looking shades. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch the light on that, but you can kind of catch it. But yeah, super, super pretty shade. I definitely really like that color. And I do think that the colors that she picked are nice. I just wish it had a little bit more depth in it, because obviously like I like something with a little bit more depth, and this one just didn't quite give it to me. So it fell a little lower, not because of quality, but because of color story. And at number 7 is the Makeup Revolution and Beetlejuice palette. And I have a bone to pick with this palette, okay? These like little critter shaped colors. I like the color story. I think the color story is actually really cool. You've got some depth. Even though this is more like pastel, you still have this like, pastel leaning black. You have a deep purple, you have a deep blue. I love that. What I don't love is the teeny tiny size of these pans. Like you can barely get your finger in there. You can barely get a brush in there. So you just get like, you get stuck. Like there's the black. It's pretty. It's smoky. But you just get stuck like trying to like jam your brush in there to try to pick up pigment. And I just don't like that. I really wish they would have made the pans just a little bit bigger so that it would be easier to get. Like I get why they did it, because they wanted to make it look like little bugs, whatever. But in terms of usability, it dropped so much lower in my rankings simply because it's hard to use. All right, coming in at number 6 is the Colourpop Control Alt Glam palette, which as I heard somebody call it the CTRLAC Glam palette, and I was like, you hurt my feelings, but whatever. So this is what the color story looks like, and it's a collab palette. I was super drawn into like these 9 shades right here. This shade, this like set of 3 shades I could care less about, but this is like what I wanted the haze palette to be, right? Like if it had this depth, we'd be in business. Now, the only trouble with this palette is that all the shades are pressed super hard. So it's you have to like dig into this palette to get pigment up. And when you do, it looks really pretty. But if you don't dig, you're not going to get anything. So this one fell down a little bit, and I was just very frustrated by the fact that it was pressed so hard. Coming in at number 5 is the Lorella Ocean Breeze palette. This one I picked up also during my Black Friday haul, and it looks like this. I picked it up because Doodles by the Bunny did the cover for this one. She did like this little cover, which I think is cute, but I just really like the color story. It's very beautiful, like oceanic blue tones without being too teal, without being too like royal blue. I thought it was just a perfect color story. The metallics in here are definitely like more of a standard metallic. They don't have anything like special. There's no like super shimmery metallics. There's nothing that like really wows you about the metallics. And while I do really like the color story, I definitely think it didn't need to be this big, because pretty much every look you get is the same. So that's the only drawback from this palette. You do have kind of this shade and this shade that can really like change it up a little bit. But if you kind of take that part out, like it's all just the same. You get light blue, medium blue, black. So for me, it fell down a little bit because it just felt like no matter what shades I used, it all kind of ended up looking the same, but I do think it has nice quality. Coming in at number 4 is the Side Zodiac Air palette, and I am not an air sign at all. I think I'm a fire sign. I'm a Sagittarius. Somebody else will know more than I will. But this is the color story, and I was just really drawn to the idea of the peaches and the purples in this color story, and I really liked this kind of like soft, kind of a peachy shade with like a blue flip to it. I thought that was really, really beautiful. I played with this palette. Oh, and I liked this one too, this Reckless shade, because it was like an iridescent pink. Played with this palette. I really like the looks that I came up with. It does feel a little bit limiting because it's very small, but it's great for travel, which I think is cool now that people can actually travel again. And I would be interested in trying the other palettes. I don't think I'd want to pay full price for them. I got this during the Sephora VIB sale. So I think like at 20% off or more, I would be more comfortable than at the full price, because these are pretty expensive for full price. Okay. We only have 3 left, and these 3, I kept shuffling these 3 back and forth and could not like land on an order, but I'm leaving it in this order. Just know that all 3 of these could have easily been number 1. I could have argued my way into each of these being number 1. So coming in at number 3 is the Colourpop Aurora Struck palette. It's actually most of what I have on my eyes today, other than the like shimmery kind of shade that I have over my lids. And it looks like this. Super beautiful. Now, I really like this palette. I think you've got some really nice lighter tones, some really nice depth. I like that the pressed glitters are like these teeny tiny glitters, so they're technically marked as eye safe. I don't know if that's true or not, so if somebody wants to comment, like leave us a comment if you know more about that than I do, because I don't. The one thing that kind of frustrates me about this palette is the metallics, because while they are very pretty, they're very like soft, and I feel like they like the duochrome nature of these colors just doesn't come through very well. So like you can see like there is some duochrome nature to it, but I think there just needed to be more pigment there to really like pick up on that. What I find myself doing is kind of building a look based on the colors that are in here, and then leaning on special shades from my singles collection to really like amp up the colors and make it a little bit more impressive than what it would be if I just used this palette, if that makes sense. So love this palette, love the color story. I think if the shimmers had been like top quality in this palette, it probably would have been number 1 and everything else would have been way lower. Like I would have been just talking infinitely about this palette, but because the shimmer formula is like not quite there, it came down just a little lower for me. All right, coming in at number 2 is the Odins Eye Christmas Eve palette, and I love the packaging. Like I'm sure you guys have seen this packaging in other people's videos already, but I do think the packaging is super pretty, and the color story is very nice. Now there are a couple shades that I kind of look at and I'm like, why is this in here? But I do appreciate that because I feel like it like makes it less monochromatic. Like it doesn't suffer from the same issue that the Lorella palette suffers from. So like this shade, this shade, this shade, this shade, that shade, I feel like really just kind of add an extra layer of dimension, make it a little bit more interesting. And of course, you know, the metallics from Odins Eye have a really like special and unique formula. This is the multichrome. I haven't even touched the multichrome yet because everything else was so pretty I didn't even think it was necessary. But I'll show you. Yeah. Woo, this is harder than it looks. You can kind of see there in the mirror like the different shifts that it pulls through. Very pretty, but all the shades in here are super gorgeous. They blend out really nicely. They're nice and buttery, so I really liked this palette. I thought it had a lot of depth and interest, so went all the way up to number 2. We still need to talk about number 1, and I don't think I've had a palette this neutral, this big, be number 1 before. But it's the Beauty Bay Neutral palette, and this is the Cool Toned Neutral palette that came out, the 42 pan version. I liked the 9 and the 16 pan versions. The only trouble is that the shades I was the most interested in were like the bottom 2 rows here, and then these like sparkly shades up here. And in those 2 versions, those shades were not present. So I went ahead and actually put this on my like birthday / Christmas list since I'm a December baby, and my mom and my stepdad were so kind as to get me this palette, and I could not be happier. I think the tones in here are super pretty. Like you have these like really beautiful rosy tones, but then you also have some very soft browns and a beautiful black in here. Like, they just look so nice. And the metallics, ooh, the metallics. Like, these metallics did not come to play, which I appreciate, because the metallics in the Colourpop palette didn't come this hard. So if the metallics in the Colourpop palette had been like this, I think it would have been number one easily, and this one would have been a close second. But they just weren't quite there. So the Beauty Bay formula kills it every damn time. And actually, some of the palettes that I'm like looking forward to getting and trying in the new year are Beauty Bay palettes. So I have more in the wings waiting for me that I need to try. But this is a very, very beautiful palette. If you like cool tones, if you like some of those berry tones, mauve tones, you will love this palette. It's $25 for 42 shades. I'm not a huge fan of huge palettes, but I do think this one is really nicely put together, so would highly recommend. And that is everything for this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go. Let me know in a comment down below, what were some of the palettes that you really enjoyed using in December? Did you pick them up in December, or were they like favorites pulled out of the vault? Definitely let me know. I want to thank you again for watching, and I will see you in a video very soon. Bye!